you can pick and choose. What it came down to for me is this. I see homeless folks in the streets of New York all the time that are American citizens. I damn sure see them in California. We've got poor, impoverished, starving people who were born and raised in this nation. How in the hell do we come up with a $53 million pilot program for illegals, but folks who are here legally are born here, we don't have enough for them? Just like we could come up with billions for Ukraine, but somehow, some way, we can't fix the homeless problem. I'm down for helping Israel. I'm down for helping address the situations with the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, okay? I'm down for helping the Ukrainians and fighting off Russia. What about poor and desolate citizens here? How the hell do you print money for foreign countries, but you don't print that money to help eradicate folks that are starving right here in the streets of America who were born and raised here? This is what I'm talking about. And so when you have something like that, what's the one way to eradicate it? Yes, you got to have a flourishing economy. Yes, you can't have inflation. Yes, you can't be.
Yeah. Stunningly stupid. That's what I'm calling it. It's stunningly stupid. It's time to take the platforms away from some of these influential men in blackface. I mean, this guy, I try hard to like Stephen A. Smith. I try hard because I appreciate the climb he's taking. I appreciate the fact that he's really worked hard to be where he's at. That nobody gave Stephen A. Smith anything. That Stephen A. Smith rose through the ranks. He probably cut a lot of throats for sure, because he comes off as such. But how ignorant. And we didn't finish it out, but he goes on to say this is why Trump will probably win or whatever. You got to cut the mic from folks like him, because he knows better. He's a very well-educated individual, college-educated individual. Not a community college, nothing against community college, but I'm just emphasizing the man has legitimate education, right? I mean, he's legitimately educated. And Civics 101. When I was in like grade school, and I'm talking like second, third grade, they say, oh, they can just print money. They cannot just print money. And the thing about it is, you understand, if you have a modicum of civics, a modicum of understanding how allies work and why it's important to the United States to protect Ukraine from Russia. We're not talking about protecting Ukraine from Poland. And this guy goes on this rant that is filled with second, third grade misinformation, stupidity, insanity. Pay no attention. I don't care who you like as far as politics, I could care less. But pay no attention to Stephen A. Smith on that. It appears Club Shay Shay has got Stephen all twisted, because he says himself, oh, this guy, Shannon has got 80-something million viewers for Kat and Monique, and but I would have handled it different, but I got to give it to him. It's like complimenting in a very jealous way. We're trying to say he wants those clicks, is what I'm saying. And that's what it is, clickbait. And that's what you're going to get until November. and an enormous amount of nothing but clickbait. And see, Stephen is one of them black folk who's got millions of dollars come in the bank, who feel that they untouchable, who feels that they won't be affected by what's coming. And so they can be Snoop Dogg and say, "Oh, I got no problem with Trump. He freed Harry O, big time drug dealer, poisoning his community, killing black folks left and right. I got no problem with Donald Trump, even though he still says that the exonerated five should be executed. I got no problem with Donald Trump, even though he says the blacks like him because he has mugshots." It's just absolutely absurd. This is why, folks, and we so grateful to you guys for tuning in each morning to the Black Press and let it be known. This is why we have the Black Press. And it's unfortunate that a Stephen A. Smith will do something like that, that a Ice Cube would do what he does, that Killer Mike is on his, you know, in his bag or whatever you want to call it, and those guys like that. Never thought I'd see the day. Back in the day when Two Live Crew and all and Luke, and I never thought I'd see the day when Luke would be the one who you could uh that you look to for reason. Because he told it like it was and told those guys, out of your mind. You're out of your mind. It's unbelievable. Unbelievable. We got a lot to talk about this morning. We also have Texas Rep Ron Reynolds to talk about the Crown Act and that situation that happened there with the young student in Texas, in the Houston area. Just unbelievable. Ron Reynolds actually wrote the law, testified on behalf of the young man, and we still got the outcome we got. This is why it's important that you turn off the Stephen A. Smiths of the world. You turn off those who will tell you something that tell you that you're not seeing what you're really seeing. Also, this morning, it's good but bittersweet news. The men responsible for the murder of Jam Master Jay have been found guilty in New York yesterday. As I said, it's a good news, bad news type thing, or good news, bittersweet news, because two of the individuals, both those individuals, had extremely close relationships to Jay. It's just so heartbreaking. Also, the National Urban League, we was on a conference call yesterday with Mark Morial. They are releasing their State of Black America report this coming Friday, and we will give you a little bit of a preview of what to expect from there. Government shutdown. Speaking of Friday, last day, unless something gets done, government will shut down midnight Saturday. We will see if they'll make some sort of deal. I'm told that Biden, 80-year-old President Joe Biden, lit into his younger politicians from the House and Senate yesterday, really lit them up, including MAGA House Speaker Johnson there. We'll talk more about that. And speaking of, I got to talk about Fat Joe. Um, and we'll get to Fat Joe and what he was talking about yesterday. I reached out to him, called him. He did not call me back. But we got to talk. We got to talk about Fat Joe this morning. Um, and so we'll get into that. Also, this morning, I got to talk about this too: the reparations, San Francisco reparations, right? Um, so we're going to show you a clip in a second, but San Francisco, they had this committee, the research reparations, and they came up with a very, very detailed and elaborate reparations payment uh, plan that covered all types of discrimination, housing, redlining, all that stuff, right? Everything, just job discrimination, everything. And they determined in San Francisco that Black residents should receive about $5 million each. And not only that, they were going to give them, they should receive um, credit and financial counseling free of charge. They were to open a Black bank in which they could put their money in. And they also, the city was to offer in a formal apology for slavery. Boston has done that too, offer for formal apology. Well, let's take a look at the clip and then we'll discuss.
17. This is a resolution to apologize on behalf of the Board of Supervisors of the City and County of San Francisco to African Americans and their descendants for systemic and structural discrimination, targeted acts of violence and atrocities, and committing to the rectification and redress of past policies and misdeeds.
This historic resolution apologizes on behalf of San Francisco to the African American community and their descendants for decades of systemic and structural discrimination, targeted acts of violence, atrocities, as well as committing to the rectification and redress of past policies and misdeeds. We have much more work to do, but this apology most certainly is an important step.
And right now, some leaders will back this apology while also backing drug testing to deny public assistance benefits to the poor, ramping up arrests of people addicted to drugs, criminalizing homelessness instead of housing people, building unaffordable housing for mostly wealthy white people on public housing land, and removing oversight of police when they use force disproportionately against Black and brown people.
This board has already said no money, no cash. The state said no money, no cash. So the question that the NACP raises, what in the world are you willing to do? What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Others have gotten cash, though it was national government that gave cash. But the thing is the principle. And for to just say categorically and downright, no cash, and yet you don't have anything else to show, that is a sham.
Supervisor Peskin.
And it is a
Preston,
sham.
aye.
It's a
Supervisor
sham.
Johnston. Preston, aye.
And
Supervisor Ronan.
you
Ronan,
notice
aye.
too
And
who was
Supervisor Simpson.
offering the apology, who read the
He, aye.
apology.
Fairclough,
You know,
aye.
a brother, as they say, a Black man, and another woman of color, right? I mean, this is it's just all perfunctory, I guess. But it is insidious, and you know, Greer was talking about this the other day, and when you think about it, there's no other way to slice it. I mean, what she mentioned, and I'm gonna uh, give you some eye popping truths here. Um, Greer mentioned that the Holocaust didn't even happen here, as we know. I mean, that it was just a succinct point, though, and yet uh, our Jewish friends received and continue to receive um, reparations. According to the Pew Research Center, you know, I love the Pew Research Center, 77% of African Americans support reparations for the descendants of enslaved people. Of course, those other 33% are like Stephen A. Smith and Byron Donalds and Tim Scott and Clarence Thomas. But check this out. Governor Kathy Hochul of New York, just last month, unveiled with the New York State Department of Financial Services Holocaust Claims Processing Office. They created a Holocaust Claims Processing Office. It assists Holocaust victims and their heirs in recovering stolen assets, and they have already secured and returned over $183 million in reparations to victims and their heirs for bank, insurance, and other material losses. Additionally, through Governor Hochul and her initiative, the Department of Financial Services has facilitated settlements involving 250 cultural objects since its inception. She says, with each passing year, our living memory of the Holocaust may get further away, but it is imperative, that we stand firm in our goal of dispelling anti Semitism. Hate has no home in New York, she says. And my administration remains committed to uplifting Holocaust survivors and their families while continuing to honor the memory of the 6 billion lives taken far too soon. How many millions of lives of African Americans from slavery? So we have that. They want to erase that memory. In New Jersey, the law is that any money or goods Jewish individuals obtain from reparations or losses resulting from the Holocaust are non-taxable. Non-taxable. So anything they get is non-taxable. The United States too has supported reparations as a form of restorative justice. After World War II, it supported Jewish victims of the Holocaust in their demands for reparations from Germany and Austria. And as recently as 2016, the U.S. Department of State helped Holocaust survivors access the payment owed to them by a French railways company that was an accomplice in deportations. Okay, how about the slave ships? Got me so upset here, I can't even say slave ships. The State Department in 2016, guys, ladies and gentlemen, paid or approved 90 claims for a total of $11 million in reparations from France to former World War II prisoners who were carried to Nazi death camps in French trains. The U.S. Holocaust Memorial Museum lists 15,082 Holocaust survivors living in the United States who received reparations from Germany. As of 2022, Jewish victims, hear me now, Jewish victims of the Holocaust have so far received more than $90 billion in reparations, while African Americans who were enslaved and their descendants received absolutely zero. From 1945 to 2018, the German government paid about $87 billion in restitution and compensation to Holocaust victims and their heirs. And then it gets even more dicey for Black folks because in 2015, President Barack Obama awarded $12 million for assistance to Holocaust survivors. And yet San Francisco sent the Black man to read the apology, and committee the committee said the apology was only one form of restitution. Go back and read it for yourselves, folks. They said they determined, this committee that was commissioned said that every San Francisco resident was to receive not just the apology, but every Black San Francisco resident, $5 million in compensation, and with the financial advisor, financial counsel, all that coming with it. And it was some educational things there as far as their children's education, Black Bank, et cetera, et cetera. And now they're saying there's no money. You heard the gentleman. There's no money. Same thing, the state of California. That they put on that pomp and circumstances about this reparations commission. Why do we have to study it anyway? They didn't study the Holocaust. They just paid it. They just paid out, and they still paying out. We just showed you they pay. Nobody can. It's not. It's not. This is not condemning. Hey, they got it, but where's ours? Where's ours? No, what we get in return. What we get in return is an empty apology, and that took what? How many hundreds of years? And what we get is the threat of a dictator who says that he wants to, who says, and his actions speak louder than words, says he wants to bring us back to Jim Crow or Reconstruction or even slavery itself. Somebody who is the leading candidate for president. Now, obviously, I'm paraphrasing, but listen. 2 + 2 is 4 all day. I don't care what social media says. The math is math in here, Taraji P. Henson. It's just amazing. This is America. Angela Connolly says he's sorry for her absence yesterday, but her son took her out on his boat to fish. She says, I'm grandma wasted too. Power 96 says, if I was that black man, I would have that city council. I would have told that city council, I'm not reading that. Yeah, right. I'm not reading it. I wouldn't, right. There's no way. I would have picked the palest white person in the room to read that. And the oldest. There's no question about it. I was not reading that. You're right, Power 96. People get mad, and he said, people get mad when we ask, where's our check? And they reduce it to things like, oh, y'all looking for a handout. We looking for a handout, huh? About simply calculating wages and wages and hours that the slaves were made to work. The lack of nutritious meals that they were deprived of, the lack of health care that they were deprived of. Not to mention the false or the illegal incarceration, I guess, of the slaves, the illegal detainment, the against the detaining them against their will. How about and calculate all that? And that is even before we get to uh, what you've done later, the mass incarceration, all of this discrimination, et cetera, et cetera. It's stuff. It's stuff. When you get going, you get going. Mr. Durrett says, when can the Black people of American file a lawsuit for slavery? That's a very interesting question. I wonder if that's been done. All right. After years of this is also upsetting. After years of speculation and decades of frustration for family members, detectives, and fans alike, a federal jury in Brooklyn finally reached a verdict in the murder trial of hip hop pioneer Jam Master Jay. The U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York announced that Carl Jordan Jr. and Ronald Washington was found guilty of Jay's 2002 killing at a Jamaica Queens studio that he owned. I got a statement just this morning. In fact, I missed it yesterday, but I got it this morning from Run DMC. I'll just tell you what I had it here. It says, we are thankful this trial has come to an end and will hopefully give some closure to Jay's family. Jay will always hold a special place in the hearts of all his friends and the people he inspired and gave an opportunity. He is the heart and soul of Run DMC. We will forever miss him. That's a statement from Run DMC on the conviction of the two individuals responsible on two of the individuals. There's a third. Can't even talk this morning. I'm so caught up in this stuff. There's a third who will go to trial in July, scheduled to go to trial. I'm sorry, not in July, but January of 2026. And among the many, many, many problems that I and I'm sure so many others have with this is that the killers of Jam Master Jay were people extremely, they were not just close to him, they were extremely close to him. One of them, childhood friend, grew up with, the other one, his godson. And when someone is considered a godson, this is what it really means. It means that that dude's parents loved Jay so much, trusted Jay so much, respected Jay so much that they said, if anything ever happened to us, we want you to take care of him. And you killed this man? You took his life? Cowardly, shot him in the head? You and the other dude that was in his house many and many a days and nights? Cowardly. You took his life. What you mean to tell me there was nothing, whatever dispute, police said was drugs, whatever dispute, at some point you didn't figure y'all was gonna work this out? That type of close bond, it was almost like blood ties. It's like having your own family member do something like this to you. There was no other way to resolve this. And obviously it didn't get resolved because whatever you felt that he may have owed you, you could never be repaid with him dead. And look what you took from Joe and Daryl and Russell and the world. There wasn't a way. I mean, they were still touring. They were still planning tours. There wasn't a way. If he owed you money, you couldn't figure out how to recoup that. Well, how do you look at his family? How do you look at his children? How do you look at Jay's children? How is that? How do you look them in the eye for 20 years? 20 years now. 22 years to be exact. Y'all killed him, hid under the code of the streets, the silly code of the streets. Nobody's going to talk. And there's no question in the 22 years since you killed him, I'm pretty sure, I should say, you were probably around his family. I remember being at his funeral, and I remember the cops and SWAT teams on the rooftops across the street, across Merrick Boulevard, and on top of the church there. And so now I think back, and I guess you were there too. The killers were there. It's as sad as it gets. And the police knew most of it. What came out in trial too, the police knew most of this evidence. They just didn't have somebody willing to talk about it. But do we watch a lot of CSI and Law and Order and all that other stuff, right? As a whole, as a collective. And maybe it's just TV. But do they really need corroborating witnesses all the time? I mean, I've seen people get convicted on circumstantial evidence. It's just like the Tupac situation with Keefe D. It's sad. It's sad, and hopefully it brings some measure. We say this, and I just don't know what to feel about it, but I'll say it anyway. Hopefully, it brings some measure of closure or some measure of comfort to Jay's family, knowing that his killers are finally going to pay the price. They'll be sentenced, and the minimum sentence that they face is 20 years, um, 20 years to life. Certainly, they deserve the maximum. They went free for 20 years. And you got one other individual who is scheduled to go to trial, as I said, in January of 2026. I don't know why they are holding off that trial for so long. In part, I guess, because he turned state's evidence, as they say. It's a lot. It's a lot. It is a lot. Like I said, I just have so many memories of Jared that always think about the fact that, and I've said this before, that I was steps away. Didn't know what was happening, but I was steps away when he was killed. I was steps away. Visiting a friend, just steps away that evening, that night. Didn't hear any gunshots or anything like that. Didn't know what was going on. Left. I probably left middle of the night, 2, 3 in the morning to go home. And didn't still he was already dead at that point, just steps away. Just sad. But again, always shout out to Run DMC, their documentary. If you haven't seen it, check it out. The Kings from Queens, awesome, awesome pioneers of hip hop in the hip hop game. Gotta love Run DMC. And a real quick note on seeing documentaries. My wait a minute. Time out, flag on the play. My big sister says I could have been his baby mama. He tried to holler, but I had to work. What? Wait a minute. Wait a minute, Monique Daniels. wait, I wait. Boy, y'all never cease to amaze me. The family and I did go see One Love last night, and if you haven't seen it, now that I've actually sat and watched the whole thing instead of just the trailers, if you haven't seen it, um, go see Bob Marley, One Love. It is inspiring as much as it is heartbreaking, but it's inspiring. Um, but go check it out. It was well done. Congratulations to Ziggy Marley, to Rita Marley. Um, and I didn't know that Brad Pitt, we didn't talk about Brad Pitt having a role as a producer in Bob Marley One Love, but any controversy, and I've heard people talk about this, about the actor who played Bob Marley. Listen, this dude was Bob Marley through and through. I know he's not Jamaican. He was Bob Marley. He took on the persona, the personality, and everything else of Bob Marley. I mean, an award-worthy, I'm not saying Oscar, but award-worthy performance by the young man who portrayed Bob Marley and Bob Marley One Love. And so was the one, I don't even know, credits are credits, but I don't even know the woman's name who portrayed Rita Marley. I'm sure Rita Marley has to be proud. That young lady was Rita Marley through and through. You guys got to see it. And I did ask Ziggy when we had him on last week about the family not being mentioned, and there was some sort of, the only name, I'm gonna give this part away. The only name of the children that were mentioned, and he was mentioned like 3 or 4 times, was Ziggy. The only name that was mentioned. You saw the other kids, but he only called Ziggy by name. So look, make of that what you will. It's still not enough to be upset. Unless you, of course, a family member, I guess. But the movie was fantastic. And yes, the movie is award worthy. So go see it. And some things came out that you might not have known about Bob Marley. Certainly that I didn't know about Bob and Rita. I mean, some great things as well as some other things. But go see Bob Marley, One Love. I mean, they're not paying us to say this, and we already had Ziggy on, so it's not like we're saying it for ratings or clicks. The Urban League is about to release its State of Black America report. And for Black America, Civil Rights Act of 1964 was the first time that the United States government addressed the racial caste system that had been protected for centuries by unjust laws and systemic brutality of non-white people in this country. 60 years later, the fight for equality, of course, is far from over. In fact, sometimes it feels like it's just getting started again. The State of Black America 2024, the Civil Rights Act of 1964, 60 years later, is the name of the report. It paints a picture of American life before and after the passage of America's Magna Carta. This year's contributing authors are elected officials, civil rights advocates, and esteemed academics who all analyzed the ways in which each title of the act created the nation that we know today. They also unpack the threats to the freedoms protected by the law and share their perspective on strengthening civil rights protections for the 21st century. And this is the 2024 Equality Index, the National Urban League semi-annual calculation of the social and economic status of African Americans relative to whites. And um, Mark Morial was able to give us a little positive stuff in this year. I mean, there's some, as he will happily tell you, or not happily, but he will certainly tell you that there's still some regression on some things, but there's been some progress on other things, and they measure it. Interesting because they measure it. The full report is measured on 4 years of a certain presidency, 8 years of Obama. Of course, he had 8 years. Trump 4 years. Trump's grade, by the way, was F plus. And the report will explain to why. And if you didn't see it after Trump's presidency, it'll explain why they put that little plus there. And it was a very it was insignificant, really, but they were trying to be as fair as possible. And Morial will tell you in the 3 years of the Biden-Harris administration, the things that have been accomplished, they didn't expect. So, so anyway, but not all is rosy. They're not. It's not like they're over there totally capping over there for the Biden-Harris administration. But you got to check the report out. We got a sneak preview yesterday, but we're not allowed to really go into the details. It's under embargo until I believe Friday. But we'll be happy to share some more from the state of Black America. Mark Morial also, I will say too, that he profusely and profoundly credited the Black Press of America, specifically the National Newspaper Publishers Association, in his opening remarks to journalists from everywhere, including the New York Times, Associated Press, NBC News, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So big ups to President Mark Morial. Power 96 says, I know for a fact Mark Morial, my frat brother and former mayor, did not sell out of a mugshot t-shirt and some J6 sneakers. I rock with the Urban League. And speaking of the pending shutdown that has brought the government to the brink again, really heated up yesterday. A meeting at the White House in which the president fumed at lawmakers on both sides. It really gave them a serious taste of what they now call dark Brandon. He was not playing. He was not playing yesterday. We're on the verge of the shutdown still again. And so Saturday, we will see. They have today and tomorrow to get it fixed. But you have to remember, MAGA Johnson, Mike Johnson there, is taking direct orders from the twice impeached, 4 times indicted former President Donald Trump. Trump wants the government to shut down. He has stated on record. He has implored. He did it on the last deadline. Implored Mike Johnson to allow a shutdown to happen. Obviously, it's a political thing, but the Senate has pretty much have a bipartisan agreement, but the MAGA House Republicans are standing firm with Trump so far. So we will see what happens. And I want to get to, before we get to Congressman Ron Reynolds, I want to get to this Fat Joe situation. He wants the world to know that he has thousands of pairs of sneakers and is a big time collector. And yes, he does proudly has a pair of the Trump sneakers. I believe we do have that clip. Maybe we don't. Okay. Well, Fat Joe decided to go on this.
These artists that you
Here
was
we go.
you love the art. So you get it. I guess they separate art from the person. Now, me as a sneaker collector, I had to get my hand on the trumps. Doesn't matter. Show us the trumps, please. Y'all trying to clout chase it. Yeah. Y'all give me a trump. Give me the trump, man. Give me the trump, man. They think I'm fronting. But listen, I have thousands and thousands and thousands pair of sneakers. When everybody flipped on Kanye, I went and bought the 2 most exclusive Kanyes ever.
First of all, you let him say.
No, I ain't doing all that. Just give me one of the sneakers. I'm not.
Show him the box first, what it says. It's friends and family, there's only 50 of these.
I got to get my hands on them. Once again,
Show him the number on the top.
I'm not a Trumper. I dislike Trump. I'm not voting for him, not now, not never. But I'm a sneaker collector into the art, so I had to find these. Now the mayor's gonna call me. Everybody's gonna call me and say, you wilding out, Joe. Why you got the Trump? Look, mayor's the first one. Joe, I'm a sneaker collector. I don't know what none of these guys did. I collect sneakers.
So I don't even know what to really make of that, except first of all, those sneakers look worn already, didn't they? Uh, and he says he's a sneaker collector. Like I said, we called him yesterday, texted him as well, didn't respond. And we like Fat Joe for the most part. But he what's the point of this, Fat Joe? What was the point of this? Nobody, first of all, nobody needed to know you had it. You had them. Joni King says, whatever, Fat Joe. Nobody needed to know. You decided to go on a live. I guess it was Instagram live or whatever, to show that you had these Trump sneakers. And then he goes on to say that they were given to him. It seemed to imply that Trump himself or somebody in the Trump camp reached out to Fat Joe to give him the sneakers. That's what it seemed to imply. And so maybe that was part of what he was doing here. I don't know, but I do know once again the message is clear. I mean, he says I don't like Trump. I'm never gonna vote for him, et cetera, et cetera. That is irrelevant. I mean, I would like, and I even and one of the messages I left for him, I said, Joe, I'd love to see your entire collection. I would love for you to come and let it be known your entire collection. Let's take a walkthrough. I mean, he mentioned the Kanyes. Perhaps, and Joe's a smart businessman. Perhaps he believes that this is an investment, that one day they're going to be worth something. I don't know. But I do know that once again, we have too many in the hip hop community, black men in the hip hop community, basically doing Trump commercials. That was a Trump commercial. No matter how you spin it, he could say all he wants. I'm not a Trumper. He said it. That's a Trump commercial, free of charge. And Joe has a brand. If somebody wants Joe to promote something, Joe easily can extract a nice hefty fee. And so you just gave a man who's a $500 million now in debt to the New York to New Yorkers, and you just gave him free advertising. Free advertising. He's wrong for that. I don't care. I don't care. You got to call people out. Like I said, I like Joe. We've had some great conversations. I like him. But you got to call people out. Got to call them out. I don't care. David says that he might as well have purchased iron chains used to enslave his ancestors. Southbound 3000 says Fat Joe's letting the world know today's price ain't yesterday's price. And David, again, all his comments do is to make that brand more popular and individual one more wealthy. This is the bottom line. We move on. Some Texas lawmakers have vowed to revisit legislation protecting hairstyles associated with race after a judge's controversial ruling that Barbers Hill Independent School District's policy prohibiting male students, read black male students, from having long hair didn't violate the Crown Act. Judge Chap B. Kane III said in his ruling that the district's decision to punish 18-year-old honor student Daryl George for refusing to cut his locks wasn't illegal in accordance with the new law. The decision follows a months-long battle between the district and supporters of George over the dress code policy. Our conversation with Ron Reynolds, the Democrat from Missouri City, Texas, who co-authored the Crown Act and testified on behalf of Mr. George, and the judge still went against him. Ron Reynolds chairs the Texas Legislative Black Caucus. Our conversation with Representative Ron Reynolds.
We filed the Crown Act specifically in response to what Barbers Hill did originally to DeAndre Arnold. He was the original student from Barbers Hill that had dreadlocks. Some of you may remember, and he was subject to disciplinary action, in school suspension. He was told, Congresswoman, either you cut your hair to comply with now what we know from the full page ad that Superintendent Poole put in the Houston Chronicle, comply. That's what he wants the students to do, conform to European standards. So DeAndre took a stand. He didn't cut his dreads.
Without long hair, and the Texas lawmakers who wrote the Crown Act assumed that would be universally understood. The new law, which received bipartisan support and took effect last year, had a goal to protect students and employees at state-funded institutions from discrimination based on hairstyles such as afros, braids, locks, and twists. It was spurred by the case of former Barbers Hill High School students DeAndre Arnold and Caden Bradford, who in 2020 were told to cut their dreadlocks by school district officials and subsequently had a federal civil rights lawsuit filed on their behalf. So State Rep Ron Reynolds, a Missouri City Democrat who co-authored the Crown Act and serves as the chair of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus, said he was very disturbed and dejected and very disappointed by a ruling in a state district court in Chambers County. Judge Chap B. Kane III determined that Barbers Hill ISD, the same Houston area district that suspended Arnold and Bradford for refusing to lop off their locks, was now violating the new law by continually punishing 18-year-old Black student Daryl George over his hair. The school district has claimed that George, who keeps his dreadlocks twisted up in a short length that does not hang below his ears, eyebrows, or neck, has been confined to in-school suspension or an alternative disciplinary campus for violating a local policy that prohibits long hair among male students. Kane agreed with the argument that hair length is not covered by the Crown Act, which Representative Ron Reynolds understandably called an absurdity. We speak now with the representative from Texas, Ron Reynolds. Welcome to the Black Press of America's Let It Be Known.
Hey, it's great to be back on with you. I always appreciate you and your message on pertinent issues that often mainstream media doesn't cover. This is such an important topic, and it's an honor to be on with you today. I'm gonna keep it real with you, man. I'm gonna keep it real. So
well, we know you do.
And yeah, I'm gonna give it to you straight. So I'm looking forward to a great dialogue with you because as you said earlier, man, I'm really outraged by the outcome of the decision that impacts this, not only this young man, but so many other African American males in Texas.
The judge seemed to say, and you're probably a lot more adverse or not adverse, but versed in this than I am. But he seemed to say, and of course I'm paraphrasing, listen, lawmakers, go back and change that law. I mean, he seems to ignored it.
Yeah, he did. I mean, look, just so you understand, you do, but just so your viewers and listeners understand, Texas is a very conservative state, Doc. We don't get many laws that are really favorable for African Americans, and because the Republicans are in the majority, and it takes a lot to get Governor Abbott to support anything. So this was a big deal. House Bill 567, we tried to pass it the previous session, and we weren't able to do it. I worked with the primary author, Representative Retta Andrews Bowers. I'm the joint author. We worked diligently, and we were so optimistic and so grateful and so thankful that we had passed this bill, because we believe that it was going to help students like Daryl from being discriminated against from schools like Barbers Hill, because they had just did it, as you said previously, to 2 other students. And that's how I got involved. I got involved when they did it to DeAndre Arnold, and he took it and said, no, I'm not going to conform to your European standards. I'm not going to cut my locks. My locks are part of my heritage. I'm proud of it. This was an honor student. He said, hey, I'm giving y'all the deuces. I'm not going to do it. He had the means. His family, he shouldn't have had to have been faced with that situation, but he transferred to another school and graduated there. Now he's a very successful student at LSU. His cousin didn't have the same fate in terms of being able to transfer, but he was impacted. We passed this law that went into effect September 1st of last year, and it was supposed to prohibit schools from having policies that would have students to have to cut their hair because of their dreads, locks, braids, or twist. Well, Barbers Hill said, you know what? You didn't talk about length, so we're going to create a hair policy that says you can't have a certain length, even if it's knotted up, if it comes below your eye, your earlobes, your eye. Yeah. So we're going to come up with this arbitrary policy. So guess what? You can't wear your braids, locks, and twists. Well, that's a violation of the Crown Act.
Well,
so,
Representative Reynolds, let me ask you. I haven't heard this talked about, but this is only for male students, right?
Yes,
the length.
That's correct. Because it only applies to male students.
Yeah, which is another form of. It makes it another form of discrimination, really, right? Because
absolutely.
How do you hold one student accountable, not regardless of gender?
It don't make sense. It said, well, okay, a female student, you're good, but a male student, no, you can't do it. It's gender discrimination. It's not equitable. It makes no sense. We didn't pass the Crown Act for just women only. We passed the Crown Act. It didn't specify gender. It was gender neutral. So this applies just as equally to men as it does to women. And I mean, so it's an absurdity. It's ridiculous. I want people to understand that this was a solution in search of a problem. They're creating a problem and they're saying, the superintendent saying, well, it's to promote discipline. Well, what the hell does that have to do with learning in an academic environment? His hair has nothing to do with his learning ability. It has nothing to do with a delineation between men and women. So this is really, they don't want their African-American boys to wear these hairstyles, so they come up with these policies. I'm going to call it what it is. This is a form of racism. The superintendent wants them to conform to European standards of what is acceptable. He doesn't want these students walking around his school in braids, locks, and twists. And it clearly is in violation of the Crown Act.
And it seems to go along, and perhaps you can talk about this. I mean, you pretty much are already, but it seems to go along with what's been going on in this country, the elimination of the banning, I should say, of certain books, of course, by and for people of color, the history. You have a governor down in Florida who unsuccessfully in a major way ran for president, and who wants you to believe that there was benefits to slavery, and now you have this situation here in Texas with this young man, basically the entire semester, this entire year, I should say, on
Yes.
suspension because of his hair. And anybody looking at his hair, the young man, and I'll say it if I'm a, I'll say that the young man looks very handsome with his hair like
Yeah. Yeah, he
that.
does. He really does. I have a son. My son, I would be comfortable with him wearing his hairstyle like that. It's very neat. Let's humanize it. This Daryl George is an honor student. This is a good kid. This is a kid. It's not a kid in the gang. He didn't have drugs. He wasn't fighting. He wasn't skipping class. He simply was wearing his hair in an expression and style that he found suitable for him. And due to no fault of his own, the superintendent wanted to single him out. He's been in school suspension. They're treating him like a common criminal. He's not been able to interact with his peers, his homies. He's not been able to.
Why haven't they taken him out? You mentioned the other one, Representative Reynolds, transferring, the other young man transferring.
DeAndre Arnold.
Say again.
DeAndre Arnold.
DeAndre, did transfer. Do you know, have you spoken to the family? Have they talked about why they kept him in that school?
Why Daryl's mom?
Right. Didn't transfer him out.
Yeah. Okay. So I think, but first of all, I applaud him for standing on his conviction.
Oh,
you know, I mean, when you think about the civil rights movement, it was people who made, in John Lewis's word, good trouble. They stood up against, oppression. They stood up. They refused to go to the back of the bus. They refused to comply with these laws. It was an act of civil disobedience, and that helped us gain the civil rights movement. They helped us gain and end Jim Crow. I commend this mother and this son for fighting, for standing on principle and conviction, because that's the kind of fight that led to emancipation, right? That's the kind of fight that ended slavery. That's the kind of fight that ended these Jim Crow laws. So I think that, on the one end, you wonder what makes them do it, but I applaud them. I commend them for being so bold and audacious to say that, you know what, I'm going to stand up for what I believe in. If not me, then who? If not now, then when? If not this, then what? So they are very courageous. I don't know if I would have been able to do it with my son, but I appreciate them for saying, you know what, we're not going to conform and we're not going to move. We have a right to be here, and we're going to fight. We're going to fight through the legal system, and they're doing that. Their attorney is going to appeal, and they're holding out. It's been tough mentally. They're down.
Yeah, Representative, they're going to appeal. What does an appeal look like, and could this wind up at the Supreme Court?
Yeah, it could. And that Supreme Court, I don't like this composition and the recent rulings of the Supreme Court.
Yeah.
But yes, the lawyer, Ali Booker, I've talked to his attorney, who was on the right side, right? I mean, the judge did a hometown, and like I'm gonna just interpret this in the most favorable way.
Wait, before you can continue, you wrote this law, helped write this law. Am I correct?
Yeah, I helped write it.
So here's the individual.
Yeah, and I testified. I testified on the stand under oath, right next to the judge, on legislative intent. I said, yes, this is what the bill was designed to do, because the whole question was the legislative intent, and was the legislative intent to protect the length of these braids, locks, and twists? Yes. And so the fact that they disregarded it made a joke out of it. The judge was just like, okay, well, I know what y'all say y'all did, but I don't see it. So you know what? I'm gonna disregard it. That's what the judge did. And it was a slap in the face to the legislative work that we did. It was ridiculous. The bill author, Retta Andrews Bowers, has said explicitly she submitted an affidavit. So we told the court that this law that we passed with bipartisan support protected students like Daryl. It prohibited policies that Barbers Hill implemented. The judge disregarded it. He totally disregarded it. And it's a shame.
And this is, do you see this as part of a broader pattern of resistance against recognizing and respecting Black cultural expression?
Absolutely. You said it, and I want to hit on it. Governor DeSantis, he did it with this quote anti-woke agenda in Florida in an AP African American Studies, talking about alternative means and benefits of slavery. It was barbaric. It was evil. It was America's original sin. There was nothing positive unless you were the person who benefited from our work and the wealth that you got because of slavery. There was no other benefits. And then on top of that, Governor Abbott, Texas, wanted to out MAGA Governor DeSantis. So he came up with this nonsense. There was no, like, they came up with this anti-DEI movement in Texas. They don't want to teach history of slavery and racism with this quote, critical race theory nonsense, right? So we see a movement from the MAGA right to erase history. They don't want what they say to indoctrinate the young people to feel guilty about the history. The history it is. We can't whitewash it.
So that's what they've been doing,
real.
right?
The Holocaust was real. No one's saying, oh, we're not going to talk about the Holocaust and what happened to the Jews. They're only saying that about our history as African Americans, and we cannot allow them to do it. We can't allow them to etch a sketch it and erase it from the history books. They don't want students to learn the true history. That's why they're erasing these books. They have these book bans. They had it happen in Texas, and we fought against it. And we have to continue to speak truth to power. And we cannot be numb and allow them to casually do this on our watch. We have to continue to fight. We have to vote, and we have to vote out these people that are hell-bent on having alternative facts, which are lies.
You mentioned, and it's so funny to hear Congressman Reynolds say this, one trying to out MAGA the other.
Yeah.
I've said that it seems like you have DeSantis trying to out Trump, and then you got Abbott trying to out Trump DeSantis and Trump, and then you got Nikki Haley trying to. What's the end game? You're a lawmaker. You're a congressman. You're the chair of the Legislative Black Caucus. We as journalists, we as laymen, and your constituents talk about this constantly, about what we see, and I'm wondering, from your seat in the state house, and you're around a lot of these MAGA conservatives, or whatever you want to call them, what is the end game for them truly? I mean, just put it to bed. What is the end game?
I'm going to put it very plainly. The end game for them is to take us back. They want to roll back voting rights. The Supreme Court has already gutted Section 2 of the Voting Rights Act. They are doing everything they can to make it harder to vote. So they disenfranchise communities of color, so we can't win elections. They are doing more racially polarized gerrymandering. They are doing everything they can to take away women's reproductive rights. But specifically when it comes to race, they want to take us back. Make America Great Again is code for the good old days when whites were in control, when whites ran everything. Trump just came out with nonsense in South Carolina. What Maya Angelou said, when people show you who I believe in the first time, he just said that Black folks should be excited because he got the mugshot, and that we should be excited. We should be excited about these damn sneakers, these Trump sneakers. So Black folks, wake up. They want to take us back. They want us to be second-class citizens.
Representative Reynolds, for people who say, no, they can't do that because, we've come too far. We got Black billionaires. What do you say?
I say they passed Senate Bill 17 in the diversity, equity, and inclusion. They passed Senate Bill 1 last legislative session that I call it the Jim Crow 2.0 in Texas, that made voting more difficult. They're racially gerrymandering districts so that they pack and crack Black districts to dilute our voting strength. They're doing everything they can because it's about voting power. They're making it more difficult to vote. They're making it easier to purchase guns. And so I want people to understand that elections have consequences. We have to vote our values, even though we may not be so excited about Biden. I'm not that excited about Biden, but the alternative is Trump. And they want to make it so that you get Trump back in office so they can put more Supreme Court justices on the Supreme Court, so they can pass more laws that hurt Black and brown people, so that they've already banned race-based admissions. They just did that at the U.S. Supreme Court. We saw the decision banning a woman's right to choose. Next thing they're going to do is take away these MWBE programs, minority women business enterprise programs, so that Black folks don't get contracts. That's the next thing that they're going to do. So they're going to do it, and they're going to do everything except athletics. They don't care about our Black ass being on the football field running touchdowns and slamming basketballs, dunking basketballs on the court or on the track. That's fine, because it makes a good viewership and puts people in the stands and stadiums. They want us to use us when it comes to that, but they don't want us in their classrooms and academics and teaching. So we as a people must not allow them to rewrite history. We stand on the shoulders of those who made good trouble, who fought and died for the rights that we have today. We cannot allow it to be taken away with the stroke of a pen. But I guarantee you, if we let them get more power, they're going to do more things like Governor DeSantis and Governor Abbott. They're going to do it. We're seeing the playbook all across the country. They have think tanks and they have these conservative groups that put these laws in place, and they are going to do everything they can to pass them all across this country.
It's folks, it's not rhetoric that
No, it's
Representative
real.
Reynolds is telling you there. He mentioned that the business grants, and we see that already with the Fearless Fund down in Atlanta, a women's group of Black women, small business owners, right?
Yeah.
And the right-wing conservatives launched a civil suit. They were giving grants. And these are Black women taking care of Black women.
Yep.
They were giving grants to Black women-owned small businesses, and the court has suspended that. They have put a halt to that as this works its way ultimately to the U.S. Supreme Court. But so I say that just to say that the representative here is not in any way giving you rhetoric. There are facts that are backing up every single thing this esteemed state rep is telling us. With the Crown Act, let's go back there because obviously this judge exploited, really, they say he exploited a loophole. It doesn't seem like a loophole was there. He created a loophole.
He created a loophole, man.
Yeah.
He created one. Yeah.
So how do
I'm
we
just gonna keep it real.
Yeah, exactly. And how do we plan to address this in the legislature, if it can be addressed? Because as you said earlier, and we know it to be true, that it takes it takes almost a miracle.
Yes,
to get
that's right. A miracle.
Legislation
That's what it
through
took to
like
pass
that.
this law. Look, here's where we are. I'm hopeful that the appeal will be successful. The lawyer is appealing the decision at from the state court, district court to the appellate court. There's also a federal lawsuit that's taking place, and we are going to continue to fight and give the resources to help this family pursue the legal remedies. I'm hoping that a court will put away partisan lens and do what's right. We follow the law. The law is clear with what we put. It protects students and in the workplace for wearing the natural hair, braids, locks, and twists. So you can't come up with a policy, this arbitrary length policy that would gut dreads, locks, and twists. That's insane. And so the plain letter of the law, if these conservatives said they're strict constructionists of the law is there to protect. And so if you're going to interpret it right. And we gave you the legislative intent. So I'm hopeful and optimistic that it will that there will be a legal remedy. But unfortunately, it takes a long time when you have the appeals. And this student is suffering right now. He's in like prison-like conditions because he's isolated. He can't participate in extracurricular activities. He can't go to a prom. He can't go to a dance. He can't be in the band. He can't be on the track team, football team. He can't do anything because he's in school suspension. He has to go to an alternative school. He's violating this policy that is ridiculous. And so it hurts his learning, his mental health. He's been depressed. He feels anxiety. He feels like he's not good enough because the school is saying either you conform or you won't be allowed to do the things that your other peers can do. So this is terrible. So I'm hoping that the courts get it right. I hope they get it right soon, because there can't be a legislative fix for another 2 years. We only meet every other year in the Texas legislature. So it's not like we can correct anything tomorrow, and we don't need to correct anything. The law is fine just the way it is.
And exactly. And you mentioned that any changes to this law, it would have to wait anyway. But here, have you heard feedback? This was a bipartisan effort, right? It had
Right.
to be in order to get
It
through.
did, yeah.
And have you heard any? We've heard your outrage,
Right.
and understandably so. Have you
Right.
heard any from the other side at all?
No, and silence, as they said, is complicit. Is
It's complete.
complicity.
Yep.
We've
Yep.
not heard anything. This thing could have been resolved a long time ago if the embattled Attorney General Ken Paxton would have enforced the law. If our TA Commissioner Mike McRath would have enforced the law, but they didn't. If Governor Abbott would have said, you know what, Barbers Hill, you're not enforcing this law, they would have changed it. So the Republican leadership has been silent. Their silence is speaking very loud. Right? They say, yeah, we passed it, but there's no enforcement of it. So they're leaving us to have to fight this fight that we really shouldn't be fighting. We really shouldn't be the ones that are in this by ourselves. This shouldn't be a racial issue. This should be about what's best for all students. And this is terrible precedent they're setting, but they have said nothing. Privately, when the cameras aren't on, when the microphones aren't on, they say, yeah, this is wrong. We don't believe this is right, but then they don't say anything publicly. So they haven't denounced the superintendent in Barbers Hill. They haven't said a damn thing about it, to be honest with you.
How frustrating is it to sit not just with the Crown Act, with this situation, but to sit, especially in the Texas legislature, seeing all of the good pieces of the good ideas for pieces of legislation that you guys come up with on your side of the aisle, and only to know that it's not going anywhere because you have extreme MAGA Republicans on the other side. How frustrating is that?
Boy, I tell you, I can't use cuss words, so I'm gonna try to keep it clean. In all sincerity, it's gut wrenching. As a Black man myself, who is the first African American elected state representative in my county since Reconstruction, I understand the trials and tribulations. I understand the shoulders that I stand on today, and to see the clock being set back, being rolled back, to see progress being made, and then it going backwards. It is troubling. It is heartbreaking, because I see it right before my eyes. I see the progress that many people made by making good trouble, working diligently, marching, protesting, even being lynched and beating. I see that progress being eviscerated. I see those protections eroding. I see, like I said, we ended diversity, equity, and inclusion. Now you have African Americans on the campus of these predominantly white institutions with no safe spaces that they could congregate, like Malcolm X Lounge, Frederick Douglass Lounge. Those are off. Those are gone. Funding that they had in place to help these students matriculate, that's gone because of Senate Bill 17 ending diversity, equity, and inclusion. So it's tough, man. It's hard, but we can't give up. A lot of days I say, what the hell is going on? And then I remember my forefathers. I remember, Fannie Lou Hamer, being sick and tired of being sick and tired. And I say, you know what? I haven't been lynched, so I can't feel no ways tired. And I have to retool and re-energize, and then go back in the locker room to talk to my colleagues and say, we're going to press forward, and we're going to continue fighting despite the opposition. So it is tough, but we have to rely on our faith and people like you and the Black media to keeping this issue at the forefront, so that people don't fall asleep at the wheel and get complacent. And even Black folks that have made middle class progress or even wealth saying, hey, I got mine, now you get yours. No, we have to help and pay it forward for those who are in the hood, those who still come from broken families and disparities. We have to do it for them just like people did it for us.
Yeah, and again, when you look at trying to ensure educational institutions, particularly in cases like Barbers Hill, are not only aware of but are actively promoting cultural competence, do you believe the lack of cultural understanding um, will continue in places like Barbers Hill, um, and how do we begin to fix that? I know you mentioned earlier about voting, but say that fails, what else? What other tools are in the belt?
You know, you're right. I mean, there are limited tools outside of voting because voting can change the people who have a seat at the table. But outside of that, we rely on the courts. You know, I mean, slavery was once legal. Segregation was once legal. Separate water fountains, until Brown versus Board, until we had successes at the Supreme Court, ending Plessy versus Ferguson. So there's so many things. So yes, either we do it from a legislative point or we do it through the courts. But I'm optimistic that if we continue to mobilize and we find people that are willing to make good trouble, that are want to be on the right side of history, not just blacks, but having other people, our Jewish brothers, our Muslim brothers, our white and Hispanic and Asian brothers, all saying, you know what, right is right. We're going to stand with these people. That is the way we change. You know, it change is not easy. It comes from, you know, as Frederick Douglass said, power concedes nothing without a demand. It never has it and never will. We must demand a seat at the table. We must demand equity and fairness. And that's why NAACP is still relevant. That's why the Urban League is still relevant. That's why Black Voters Matter, which I'm rocking my shirt today, is still relevant. That's why it's still relevant that we have, you know, other fraternities and sororities and the links and all these Jack and Jill. It's relevant, but it's relevant when we speak truth to power and we're willing not just to have a banquet and a gala and to feel good about ourselves, but to be on the front lines making a difference. That is what it's going to take. We got to take it to the streets. We got to go back grassroots. I was so impressed after George Floyd's death that we came together. We saw young people in the tens of thousands go to the streets to demand criminal justice reform. And we saw some changes. We have to have that same sense of outrage, the same sense of responsibility and civic engagement to change this paradigm in Barbers Hill and across the country.
Well, certainly you can include the Black press and all of that, and certainly give our best and to that courageous young man who's still fighting the great fight and his family. And we certainly appreciate you, Representative Ron Reynolds, for coming on the Black Presses, Let It Be Known, to further, flush out the problems there with this judge, with the ISD, with the Barbers Hill ISD, and everything else that's ailing us right now. And we appreciate you also for being so outspoken. Thanks so much, Representative Ron Reynolds. Thanks for joining Let It Be Known.
Thank you, man. Appreciate it. Look forward to coming back on. I'm gonna give your boy Jeff Boney my regards. He's
Absolutely
right with me, man. Him and Karen and all the folks in H-Town, they've been covering this locally. So thank you for covering this nationally. We appreciate you and appreciate the Black press, man. You all are the front line, and we appreciate you speaking truth to power without fear or favor.
Representative Ron Reynolds out of Missouri City, Texas. Really appreciate him. He has vowed that he will be back. And really, whenever we reach out to him, he says he'll make himself available for us. Thank you all again for joining Let It Be Known. Again, subscribe to our YouTube page, Let It Be Known News there. We're on Twitter as well, and of course, Facebook, but Let It Be Known News YouTube channel. Subscribe. Get your friends to subscribe, your family to subscribe, everyone subscribe to Let It Be Known YouTube page. Appreciate you all, and we'll see you again tomorrow.